So going back, let's go back to the start. You formed a band. You had a bunch of songs written. You started going out doing gigs.
Yeah, our very first gig was at the Punters Club on a Monday night, and yeah, we were the first band on a bill of 4 bands, I think, and it went pretty well for a first gig. It went well enough that we, someone in the crowd immediately offered us another gig, and
right.
So we played again the following week, and it just led to more gigs. And before we knew it, we were like gigging regularly.
And how long did it take to get a bit of a following? Like, was it pretty instantaneous?
It was pretty quick, but it was mostly through the all ages scene. At that point, there were these regular Saturday afternoon all ages shows, and at that we were still like 18, just turned 18, I think. We actually didn't. We put off booking our first gig because we had to wait for me to turn 18. So we played our first gig shortly after my 18th birthday, but we were doing these regular kind of Saturday afternoon all ages shows at like the Corner Hotel and the Central Club in Richmond, and they had these great, we'd be playing with like Magic Dirt or UMI or Spiderbait, and we were like way down the bill, but people just started kind of coming to after a while. It felt like people were actually coming to see us as well and not just the other bands.
Right.
And then we made a demo tape and started selling that at the shows, and we went through lots of kind of pressings of that. Like, we had to start getting it professionally pressed.
Right.
And we were, we sold a few hundred copies of that, and that sort of led to, some A&R type people from record companies kind of going, I guess that they were hearing about this band that were selling hundreds of copies of a demo tape.
Right. I was going to ask, actually, how did that happen? Did someone come and an A&R guy see you, or it was word of mouth?
I guess it was... He went... well, the way he tells it, because the guy who ended up signing us, Chris, the way he tells it, he used to go in and hang out at Or Go Go Records, which was kind of a, hub of, indie, underground kind of bands at the time. And they were selling our cassette on the counter, because we went in there and dumped a bunch of copies on them, and they agreed to sell it on the counter, and they had it sitting on the counter, and Chris just was like asking about it, and I think Pat Monahan, who used to run Or Go Go, said to him like, "Oh yeah, we're going through hundreds of these things." So Chris started coming to see us, and then one day we were living in a share house together, and the phone rang, and this guy sort of introduced himself from Murmur Records, and
right.
And everyone, all the kind of bands knew who Murmur Records were at the time. They'd just signed Silverchair, and Silverchair had just kind of exploded.
So you're 18, 19 years old, and you signed to Silverchair's label. You must have thought, my God, I've hit the jackpot here. Well, honestly, living the dream.
Well, to be honest, it was... I mean, obviously it was a great feeling, and we were really excited, but we were also pretty sure that we would make one record and get dropped.
Right.
We didn't... Because, we were a particular kind of band, we were not as hooky or immediate or, anthemic as Silverchair and some of the other bands on the label. We were playing pretty abrasive music. So we kind of, our feeling was just like, well, shit, we get to make a record. That's exciting. And we'll probably never get to make another one. So,
right.
So because obviously the deal as well, like a lot of record deals, they sign you for one album and then a bunch of options.
Right.
So you make one album and then they have the option of making another album. So you always expect that as soon as you underperform, that's it. You're out.
Yep.
So it was a 5-album deal, and we ended up making 5 albums.
And so Triple J kind of picked you guys up early on?
They played us. Triple R, lots of stations, lots of community radio stations played us, and Triple J were great. They played us, and but again, as well, our first record was pretty abrasive, and it wasn't. It didn't become like immediate sort of Triple J fodder, and it was a different time too. Like people really focus on Triple J these days like it's the be all and end all of the band's career. But it's we just gigged, and I still think that is the key to any band who wants to have a career. Is you just actually have to play your backside off and not focus too much on who is or isn't playing you, or because things change and things go up and down, and so and again it all comes again back to the influence of those bands that we were really into, bands like Fugazi and Sonic Youth, and the way they operated was really inspiring to us. They just did their own thing. They booked their own tours. They everything was kind of do it yourself. Your album artwork, your music videos, your tour, like your relationship with your audience was something that you nurtured between you and them, because it was sort of anti-establishment, I guess. I mean, yes, we signed to a major label, but that doesn't mean that we just immediately became passive and let their staff kind of handle everything for us. I mean, we signed to them so that we had money to make a record and that they would actually put it on record store shelves for us.
Yep.
But everything else, was up to us. So we did our artwork, we booked our tours, and we just kept ourselves busy.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's really the key thing with any band, is you've just got to actually be out playing.
Yep.
Instead of sitting at home waiting for success to come to you.
They'll never find us painting a self-portrait, painting ourselves into position. We'll scare them off with wordplay and sweep them onto the rug. My face is pushed against the glass like a slow second better off. I throw from the horse's back, but if I know where I am, is there a problem with that? Hang around always.
Were there more venues around then, do you think, than now?
There were, yeah. Not so much in like, it's sort of always been the same in capital cities, but there were more places that you could play. It's it's funny, I was talking to someone about this the other night. It was so we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. It was before Virgin Airlines, before the era of low cost airfares. It was too expensive to fly. A band couldn't fly like a sort of indie band like us or whatever. I say indie band, it's like these words are so stupid. I mean, we were signed to a major label, but we were doing the same thing as all the other bands that weren't alternative band. I don't know, whatever you want to say. You couldn't afford to fly. The kind of money you were getting for gigs, there was no way the three of us could afford to fly to another city to play a gig. You had to jump in a rental car and drive.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would drive from Melbourne to Brisbane, play one show and turn around and drive home.
Right.
That was just the reality. And but what that meant was that because there were so many bands driving between Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, there were venues in Coffs Harbour or Lismore or Port Macquarie. There were places that you could stop and play because bands were actually driving up and down the Pacific Highway.
Yeah.
And then as soon as so you could play in places like Coffs Harbour or whatever, and they were regular sort of gigs. And then as soon as cheap airfares came along, everyone just started flying between Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and all those venues disappeared.